We'll start in less than 3 minutes. Welcome everybody. How you're doing? Just gonna get started in 3 minutes. We're gonna give time for people to join in. While we do that, I'm just gonna play some music so I can enjoy. We'll start immediately in 2 minutes. Everything I desire in your world, you provide. I have lose my mind. I hear your hands. I can tell you your best. All my life, my life is in your hands. My life is in your hands. All my life, my life is in your hands. My life is in your hands. All my life, my life is in your hands. My life is in your hands. All my life, my life is in your hands. My life is in your hands. That would my life be if it wasn't for you. Yeah. Because every night and day I've been living in your rest. But then you keep my money, Lord, I know you never listen. Okay. Good day, everybody, wherever you're joining in from. Either it's night or afternoon, it's morning, or wherever it is. I'm so glad that you're joining us today. By way of introduction, I'm going to introduce myself and also the brand. So first of all, my name is Joseph Dayola. Um, by profession, I'm a research data scientist. I work in the healthcare sector, and also I do have a PhD. And by brand name, I actually do this is called JJE Green Card. And JJ is from my first name and my last name. So J as in Joseph and JAY as in my last name, but there's a I in between. That's if you get the correct spelling right. So today this is going to be a series that's going to continue like once a month, and you can increase the frequency. And the whole idea is to talk about stories behind the approval with JJ. And let me explain the whole concept of stories behind the approval with JJ. The concept is that it was more from my own pain points, and that was why I want to I noticed that gap and I want to sort of bridge it. So backstory, and that's why it's a story. So this conversation are just going to be more story like. But while you're here, if you feel like you're getting value or you think you'll get value, send this to your friend, your enemy, your ex, everybody that you think will need this information. Even people who have their green card already, send this to them. I mean, who knows, we could connect and make valuable relationship. So try to send this to people. So please and please share this to people. We want as much as a lot of people to have this information, and so that they don't get to ask you the same question when you're like, oh, you could have just joined the live and you could have also just asked their questions. So yeah, like I was saying, I was talking about the stories behind the approval. Also, in case you have any question, it's already pinned the pin to asking question is already like on this like right now in the charts. So estimated it should be like for like an hour. It depends on how the vibe is going. If it's quite interesting, we might make it like maybe less than an hour, or if it's interesting, maybe we might extend it. But the plan is to make it for 1 hour or so. So please start asking your question, because I know this is on YouTube Live and it's not like very much interactive. And in case you're not even able to ask a question and you see a question that you like, you can upvote those type of questions. So the stories behind the approval was at the time that I applied um for my application. So just to give everyone context, I applied for both the EB1A and EB2 NIW. And in case you don't know what the EB1A and the EB2 NIW is, I'm going to explain that a little bit to an extent in this video. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to be using this chapstick, and my lips are getting very dry. And and this is going to be a long conversation. Sorry about that, guys. So the stories behind the approval, I remembered at the time that I applied for both the EB1A and the EB2 NIW, and that is why I think I know both of them well. Thinking about it right now, I remember then I felt like that was more like I in quotes wasted my money. I could have just applied for the EB1 straight and gotten the approval. But the fact that I went through that route, I think it was very helpful for myself and also for other people. So the whole idea of stories behind the approval is much more than, oh, I got approved, much more than, God did it. What were the stories behind the approval? What were the emotions? What were the things that, what were the struggles? What were the uncertain things? And this is being raw. And the concept about the stories behind the approval is not just myself talking. I'm going to be bringing people like from multiple fields. And if you know anybody that you recommend, or even right now, probably you're in the comments or you're listening to this live or you'll listen in the future and you've had approval, shoot us an email at jjebgreencard. It's JJAY at ebgreencard@gmail.com, and we'll get to have conversation. I just want to know what your profile looks like to know before I'll bring you live, just to let people learn from your story. This is purely just so that people will get value. So I was talking about, and this is me also going details into my story. I remember at the time I had a couple of uncertain things about application. And I know some of you are like, oh yeah, you applied, who knows when, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It was easier then, now it's a little bit more harder. Sorry. At the time also people were really saying it was harder. So the interesting part is that maybe it's getting harder because of the statistics. So it's like there was really never a time where people were like, oh yeah, this thing is good to go for it right now. It's people who always tell you that it's hard, and that's why I am coming here to say what the emotions were like. And in my when I created like an EB2 DIY course, I kind of in the first module I started with talking about my story, because I knew that that's like the set of foundation behind every other thing, because there's also like the mindset. I'm also going to talking about like the mindset shifts. And just let me know in case I'm talking too fast so you're not getting anything. Just let me know what's if there's anything you're like you want me to retreat. I'm going to be looking at the charts also. So, and my thoughts might be a little bit all over the place because I don't have a note. I'm just trying to be myself. So just follow me through the stories. And in case you're just joining, welcome to Stories Behind the Approval with JJ. I'm just going to be talking about real people story, starting with myself as the guest and the host. And in subsequent months, we'll try to bring in other people. And I remember at the time, the one thing that I know is that except you are really like out of the blues, your first knowledge about EB1 or EB2 NIW is going to be from somebody. Like somebody would have to tell you. So because somebody tells you first of all, there's a likelihood that they might dilute that information or they might not give you the accurate information. Interestingly, they might actually also give you like the like accurate information. They might give you like the accurate information, but that information might not be sufficient. That's one thing that you need to know. And that was I was in that like shoes, like just like maybe some of you are right now. I got information related to the EB2 NIW. This was way early when I started my own PhD program, even before probably even arriving in the United States, but I wasn't paying much attention to it. I started to like get to hear different people's opinion about it. I was starting to build my profile, and they were real fierce. So let me go summaries around the stories behind the approval, why I'm bringing this live. So, but there was one of the things I did at the time was I went to YouTube and I was trying to look for people that were sharing their stories about their approval. And I couldn't find a lot. And I think I stumbled on one or two videos. And there was just this lady, she spoke about like, how she got approval, how that there were some fears. And I was just listening to that story. That was like, I think what I'm feeling right now is not abnormal. It's normal to feel like, having that sort of uncertainty when it comes to applying. And after I got my approval, I started to like, tell my friends that we arrived in the United States at the same time, and they go, guys, you could do these things. So I was sharing my story, and it took me like a good number of maybe 1 year or two right now. I think from approval right now, maybe 2 years plus, that I'm like comfortable to talk about my story outside, because I'm also not this more of a social media kind of person. So that's the whole thing. Like people will feel the pain, people who are in your field, people you can ask real question. Now I have like some questions that I prepared for myself that I'm going to talk about stories behind the approval um with myself. But before I go into talking about stories behind the approval, I'm going to be talking about the some of the recent immigration policies, the one that the president had implemented. So don't rush, don't leave this life early. And in case you have questions related to that, if you are more current, just yesterday, as at the time of recording this video, or 2 days ago, the government released the March Visa Bulletin, and that Visa Bulletin was a lot of good news. I'm going to be talking about what does that mean for you? What does that mean for you if you are within the United States? What does that mean for you if you're outside of the United States? What does that mean for you if you've applied? What does that mean for you if you've not applied? What does that mean for you if you are thinking of switching between EB1 and EB2? What are still the current limitations and the barriers? So please don't rush. I'm going to be talking about a whole lot of things, and I will allow you to ask your question. And most likely, the next platform we will use will probably use something that is more interactive. So, but I want the chat to be bubbling. I know there's a good number of us right now on this call. I want the chat to be bubbling just to give that sort of encouragement and moral support and all that. So, thank you for that. So, while just before, let me give a background of what the EB2 and EB1 is. I would assume maybe almost everybody doesn't know about it. So let's think about how do you a lot of people want to migrate to the United States. And when we migrate to the United States, migrating can mean that you just want to stay here temporarily and go back to your own country, or you're just coming to like temporary visits. But in this context, migrating means that you intend to live and work in the United States. And the one of the first step, or not the first, one of the few steps to that, in the United States context, is that you need to have a green card at least to be able to live and work in the United States for a good number of time. There are other things you can have that allows you to live and work in the United States that is on a non-temporary basis. Even the green card, you'll probably still be able to live and work in the United States, not for life, but it gives you a pathway to citizenship. So there are very layers to this, but like, so to be able to live and work in the United States, you need a green card. It's just like if you're driving and one day the Google map takes you through one route, another day it takes you through another route, but the destination is still the same. So the destination is the green card. A lot of people who want to migrate to the United States, their goal is to be able to have a green card and eventually get US citizenship. That's if you want to become a US citizen. So the question is, according to the US immigration and those that are in charge, is called the USCIS. So there are various pathways to become or to get a US green card, and most of those pathways you need somebody or something else. You need a third party to be able to help you get through that route. So one of those third parties, you either need a family member, either your spouse or your child, or you need your sibling. That's called the family-based route. There's one which is also the employment-based route, that you probably need an employer or you need a job offer. So you still need somebody. Or there are some whereby you probably don't need anybody, but you would go through like a visa lottery process. So I'm not talking about that. But in all of this process, there's also the humanitarian one. There are some that are also not open to some countries. But in all of this process, the one of the ones that are a little bit easier or that are tailored towards professionals is actually the EB1A and EB2 NIW. And the EB1A and EB2 NIW is under the employment. It's more like this is all branched out, but there's no, if you're not much interested like myself in the whole US immigration process, there's no point to learning about it. So you can leave that knowledge to us for us to explain to you. It also took me a while to learn this. First of all, I need to say that it's very important I say this. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not claiming to be one. I'm also not USCIS. And so everything that I say here is basically informational purpose only and not a legal advice. So you have the opportunity to do, you should do your research about it. So disclaimer for anything that I have said or that I will say in today's video. So this is just proper protocol. And for those that live in the United States, you understand what I just did. So just moving on to like the conversation that we're having, right? So I'm thinking on my feet. So that is the EB1A and EB2 NIW. That's like one of the pathways that you don't necessarily need somebody. So what that means is that you can self-petition, and you just have to understand the criteria and say by myself. So this is open for everyone within and outside of the United States. I know there are some country ban, and the word everyone doesn't sound like it covers everybody, but we'll talk about that. Typically, this is open for anybody that is a professional or that meets the criteria within and outside the United States. So you're living in the United States and you are here on a temporary basis, F1, H1B, whatever visa that you are on. That pathway is a sure way to get to get a green card. So you don't need to have a job offer before you can get it. So that's the EB1A and the EB2 NIW. And the question is, people ask, what is the EB1A? What is the EB2 NIW? Or what is the difference between both of them? So some of you I know right now, you're like, oh, I know these things already. Just jump straight to the point. So 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you probably did not know this. So please be patient for everybody and let people that don't know anything about this also learn it. And one thing I would say is that some of the things I would say today might not be, you're like, oh, I'm missing the details. Like you're not sure you understand very well, which is fine, it's normal, it's part of the process. Myself also, the first time I heard about it, I'm like, what are they saying? I had to listen over and over again, and that's why we'll be having this conversation like a lot of times, and that's why you have the opportunity to ask your questions just to get clarity on whatever I'm about to say. So the EB1A and EB2 NIW, I like to call them senior brother and junior brother, or maybe let me not be gender specific, a senior sibling and the junior sibling. So the junior sibling, let's start with that, which is the EB2 NIW, which is quite popular. The EB2 NIW, the full name is called Employment-Based Second Preference National Interest Waiver. Yes, I know it's mouthful. Employment-Based Second Preference National Interest Waiver. And what that simply means is that it allows individual to self-petition by themselves, but I'm not going to go into details about EB2 and NIW for now. Why EB1A is employment-based first preference. Employment-based first preference. Before going to the EB1A and the EB2 NIW differences, let's understand what is the EB2 NIW. The EB2 NIW has layers of criteria. I like to call it step 1 and step 2. So the step 1 means that you need to fulfill 1 out of 3 things. So one out of 3. So it's either you have an advanced degree, that's a master's or a PhD. So imagine, so step 1 has 3 options: 1A, 1B, 1C. So all you just need is 1 out of these 3. You don't need all 3. So that's step 1. So you either have an advanced degree. If you have a master's or a PhD, you are good to go. That you pass step 1. If you don't have that, let's go to step 2. Step 2 is that you have 5 years post-bachelor work experience. If you don't have 5 years post-bachelor work experience, progressive work experience, not that you graduated in 2021 and 2026, you're like, oh, that's 5 years, and we're not doing anything. That's not progressive work experience. 5 years progressive work experience. If you don't have that, okay. Then the other one, this sounds like a middle finger. The other one is you have, if you don't have 5 years professional work experience, you don't have a master's degree, then the next one is you can claim exceptional ability. And what does exceptional ability mean? Exceptional ability is not just, oh, I'm exceptional. No, I'm not exceptional. There's a way USCIS define it. And there are 7 criteria for the exceptional ability. Part of those 7 is you need to meet 3 of those 7. And those 7, and 3 that I know that is very simple to me, so I might not be able to mention all 7 right now, is that you need to have a form of degree. So let's say you have a bachelor's degree, that is qualifies. The other one is that you need to have a certificate or a license. You can go write a certificate or license today based off of your field if you don't have one. The other one is also that you belong to professional membership. If you don't belong to a professional membership now, you can join one today. A lot of membership association, they just need to pay and you join. So that's 3. That's almost anybody can fulfill the exceptional ability criteria. And there are other ones whereby like contribution to the field, high salary, or you've had like think like 10 years work experience, and there's also comparable evidence. So just so you know, at the time I applied for the EB2NIW, I didn't have a clear-cut master's degree. And I'm going to give you a strategy if you're like myself, if you don't have a clear-cut master's degree. So somebody can do it to remind me at the end, or just put that in the chat at the end. I'm not going to talk about that now. So that's that about the step 1 for the EB2NIW. So the step 2, so step 1 is you just have to fill 1 out of 3. So if you fill 1 out, master's, 5 years, or exceptional, you're good to go. That's almost everybody can fulfill that one. But the step 2 is where it starts to get a little bit complicated. That's where there's actually a need for a whole course to explain. And the course that I have was like about 8-hour watch that explains the details of it. So this is me pouring out all my knowledge over the years about like the EB2NIW. And so the step 2, which a lot of people, which you guys will probably know about, so it's called 3 prongs. When you hear prompt, what does prompt mean? You're like, oh, this sounds complicated. Mind you, USCIS website, you will see a bunch of legal lingua. Oh, that sounds like a rhyme. Legal lingua, like it's a lot of legal language. So it's just some of these things to scare people away, and that's why, like myself, is we are trying to make this information so plain and language. It just means 3 criteria. Prongs means what is criteria. So for those 3 prongs, the first one, the 3 of them is not they are not optional, they are compulsory. But technically, of those 3 prongs, we just have 2. It's like we have 2.5. The half is disguising. So this is me just giving you like so that you understand. So the first one is that your proposed endeavor has substantial benefit and national importance. The second one is that you are well positioned to advance your proposed endeavor. The third one is unbalanced. It's going to be beneficial to waive labor certification. All these things are big grammar. So let me explain to you simple. So the first thing is just trying to tell you that USIs want to know that what you plan to do, not what you are doing currently, what you say you would do in the United States. This doesn't have to be like innovative out of the blues. What you say you would do in the United States is going to be useful for the US. That's what the first prong is saying. What you will do is going to be useful for the US, and there's a way that is judged. The second one is what you say you will do, you have the ability to do it. You cannot say, AI is important to the US and you are a medical doctor. Okay, maybe you can do AI, but whatever it is, or you're a carpenter and you said you want to do AI because AI is like cybersecurity. So what's the third is 3 things. What you want to do is going to be beneficial to the US. The third one, the second one is that you have the ability to do what you want to do. And the third one is now, in conclusion, what you say you want to do and what you want to do makes sense. So what happens is that if what you want to do is not, the officer doesn't see that it's useful to the US, automatically you will fail number 2 and number 3. If the officer feels like what you want to do is not is useful to the US, but you don't have the ability to do it, you fail number 3. So like number 3 is like the final decision for the officer. It's like what you want to do is very useful. What you want to do, you can do it. It's very rare that you find that you pass number 1, number 2, that you fail number 3. You cannot, if you fail number 1, just so that you fail number 3 also. If you fail number 2, you've also failed number 3. So that's why when people have RFE is called request for additional evidence. When the officer says, okay, like explain yourself more. When the officer says they fail number one, number two, they will also say they fail number three. So technically, what you failed is just two things. So when you are working your petition, so majority of your strength in your application should be focusing on the first two. And that is where in your writing your proposed endeavor, you have to think of a proposed endeavor within the context of what you can do. And what you can do is dependent on your skills and your expertise, your educational background, your work experience. So you have to find that sweet spot and say, I don't want to overpromise and I also don't want to underpromise. Right? I also don't want to, because you can, officer can tell you your proposal anywhere is good enough, but nah, I don't think you can do this thing. Right? So, and that's harder to come up against. But a lot of people, so what I usually advise people is look at your skill and expertise. There is almost everybody, you have something you can do based on your skill and expertise that's going to be beneficial to the US. So, but this is not details about EB2 class. This is just talking about like giving people background about the EB2 NIW so that when I'm explaining the difference and going into details, you understand better. Why the EB1A, like I said, is a senior sibling to the EB2 NIW, is more about that also has three steps or three criteria, and the three criteria are compulsory. But when you tell people oh, EB1A, they say it has 10, but technically it's a sub. So let me go into detail about it. So those 10, so out of those 10 that we have, before going to those 10, so we have three. So there is the first part which says that you're a person of extraordinary ability. The second part or the third part which says that your entry will beneficial to the United States. And the third one is that you would continue like what you say you want to do. The second and the third is not like very popular because it's kind of easier to fulfill. So under the first part, I used to call it that we have 1A and 1B. So 1A means that you fulfill like some criteria out of 10 things you fulfill. So under the first part, right? You could just visually. So the first part has a 1A and the 1B. So this is 1A, this is 1B. So the 1A has the 10 things you have to look at, and the 1B is the sustained on national and international claim. So the 1A, they list a bunch of 10 things and say out of these 10 things, we needed to satisfy three of them. So, and I can list a bunch of them. You have an award, professional membership, publication about you. You also have you have publications, you have high salary, and all of those kind of things. So, right. So when you meet three out of those 10, that's 1A. The 1B is that you then have sustained national and international claim. And there's a whole lot of things going on right now about like maybe that should be scrapped. So if you want to understand this better, you can either like check out like random YouTube videos, or you go to like my Instagram page, JJ Green Card, or also on this YouTube. Like I'll be creating more videos to explain that in detail. So I don't want to talk about those detailed EB2 and EB1A. I just want to give like context overview. So the difference between the EB1A and EB2 NIW is that on the surface level, and even though both EB2 and EB1 is current now, I'm trying to be balanced for people that don't know anything about this so that they can have more context. Even though you don't know both the, though you don't, even though you don't, even though both the EB2 and EB1 right now is current as a right now, it's still not current. And I'll explain that. But what is the high level difference between the EB1A and EB2 NIW? By if you get approval for the EB1A, you will most likely get your green card faster compared to the EB2 NIW. The other difference is that both of them, not the different similarity, their prices are the same. The EB1A is a little bit harder. EB1A focuses more on your achievement, what you've done in the past, more of what you've done as a professional of extraordinary ability. EB2 focuses more on what you would do for the United States. And that is why a lot of people can, if you have like some business, so we can always make a good story and say, look, this is what I would do for the United States. But there's also an overlap, right? Because in your EB2, when you are writing the EB2 NIW, you also talk about your own achievements, right? So that's the minor. So the minor in the EB2 is you talk about your achievement, but the major is that you will talk about what you will do. The major in the EB2 is that you talk about your achievements, but you also talk about what you do, what you've done. Now, that is where my story comes in. So, what was my story for the EB2 NIW and the EB1A? So when I was thinking of the EB2 NIW, I wasn't thinking about the EB1A because I couldn't. First of all, I would not have even been able to fathom it. First of all, because even the EB2 NIW, I had a lot of people that told me I did not qualify, and here's why they said I didn't qualify. So backstory, I probably doing a PhD. If you did a PhD, you're doing a PhD, my heart is with you. I know that stuff is stressful. So and especially just being an international student, I mean, there's just a lot of complexity and layers that comes into place. But sorry, bro or sis, I know it's stressful, but if you don't put in some extra stress at the time that you're doing that PhD, the stress that will wait for you when you graduate, you don't even want to imagine it. I've seen different people, I've heard their story, and even me myself, I'm not in their shoes, but I feel really pain for them. And that's why I want you to avoid this kind of scenario. And like I used to say, the best time you need something is not when you need it. So if you think, oh, you're in your first year, in your second year, you still have like more years to go. Don't worry, I'll apply for this thing later. The best time to get something is not when you really need it, it's when you feel like you have more options. Because the way US immigration work, the more time you have, the more options you have. So back to my story, I remembered I was people had told me about the EB2 NIW, and I was like, people were like applying for this, they were working on the application, but I just discarded information, just like some of you are discarding this information right now. I was like, you know what, I'll apply for this later. And it got to a point, I guess, in almost maybe 1 year or 2 years to graduation. I was like, I want to graduate. I was already getting tired of the PhD because PhD is just stressful, not because I didn't love my program. I love the program. And I said, I intend to graduate this XYZ time. I intend to graduate. I have a graduation time. So by the time I resume the program, I'd asked my colleagues, or I'd looked at the curriculum, when is the earliest time I can graduate in this program? And they said, okay, if you do everything right, this is the earliest time you can graduate, that you not pay school fees out of pocket. I'm like, okay, let's just target that time. And I worked my way backward and I said, if I want to graduate at this time, 1 year from now, I need to start on this application process. And that was my first of all starting point. So what I did was, then I did also 1 year more backward. Then I remember this was maybe 2023 or 2022. I guess it was 2023, the beginning of the year. I created a note on my notepad, and what I did was I wrote it EB2 NIW. So everything I was doing, or I thought would like meet the EB2 NIW criteria, I would just write it there. Okay, these are things that I've done, and this is like I'm telling you real stories, real strategies, and you can get some points from this. So I started to write all of those already into it. From there, I one of the things I also did was I was more intentional to attending webinars like this. I didn't know it didn't jump they didn't jump on me, right? So I was attending more webinars, learning about this whole process. As I was learning about the whole process, I remember it was just only about the EB2 NIW. By the time it was December of 2023, this was a whole year, and this particular year, 2023, if I'm not mistaken, I was intentional to reaching out to people to ask for more opportunities. Right, I was asking them, oh, I needed if there was any other opportunity like judging the works, I was reaching out to my professors more. I was getting more opportunities and I was documenting those processes. So some of you might listen to this and you might not get to apply until 1 year from now. And some of you might listen and like, oh, you still want to wait, but you're waiting because you're afraid. So no way you actually fall in within that category. And in case you want to get to see me or have a one-on-one session with me, you could do that. Somebody's going to put in a link in case you want to book a one-on-one with me also, and you could also even join like the WhatsApp community just so you can ask your question and know about our other like events. So but I digressed a little bit. So one of the things also is that I want to, so I'm getting the message here. I want to be sure that I'm addressing everything. So please and please, as you're watching this, we need in case this is valuable, please do also subscribe to this channel. It's going to help us gain more visibility, and also like this. And so one thing you also need to know is that the next edition is going to be happening in March. So we're going to be putting more about that. So please try to put up the link for like the WhatsApp community, please, so that people can get to have more information. So but just going straight into the point to about like I eventually did apply by um by December. I was working on my application, and I spoke to one person, and he was like, oh, you don't have a master's degree, they are not going to even open your application, they will reject your application, you're just going to waste your money. And at the time I was still talking to somebody that, oh, this is my last savings in applying, and this guy was like, you know what, I'm just going to smack you, just go apply because you make the money eventually. I was like, okay. I worked on the application with a friend of mine. We wrote it during the holiday, and I still had challenges getting some letter of recommendation from some of my recommenders. What I just did was I just gave myself a date that I'm going to submit this application. I submitted at that date, and it was after I submitted that one of my recommenders gave me that recommendation letter. So I submitted the EB2 NIW without premium processing, and I was like, I didn't have the money at the time. I had the money to do premium processing, but I just think it wasn't worth it piece of the information that I had. And right now, I would say if anybody wants to do this, if you have the fee for premium processing, you should do it, because policies are changing and very fast. So just get your approval out of the way. So I think 3 or 4 months later, I saw somebody posted about the approval for the EB1A. And I was like, wait a minute, let me think about this intensely. And before then, I remember that I wasn't still sure I wasn't going to go for it. And I remember I went to church that day, and they were talking about stories from the four lepers. In case you don't know this, it's in the early books of the Bible, whereby some guys, there was famine, and they just summoned courage to say, you know what, we would either go to this Syrian army, they will either get us killed, or we stay here and starve, and we'll stay there regardless. So I just took that, bold step. But after taking that bold step, I then did a thorough research about the EB2 NIW and also the EB1A. After I submitted the EB1A, I guess I was telling one of my friend about, oh, won't you also do the EB1A? But I didn't tell him that I did the EB1A. So he was like, oh, if you didn't do the EB1A, if you don't do premium processing, that means you don't pay additional 2005. They're not going to give you your approval on time. You're going to wait almost 1 year, like more than 1 year. And I was like, you know what? So that night I couldn't really sleep. I didn't really tell anybody. I I took out the money, all my last savings from my bank account at the time. Then I went to the premium processing. 1 week after, I got the approval, and the rest is history. So that's that about like my story. And I'm going to take on one question from here, and I will talk about like what the ban means. So a few days ago, or 2 or 3 days ago, as at the time of recording this video, or let me give backstory. So January this year, the President of the United States made a proclamation to ban citizens of certain countries from um, from some immigration processes. There were a lot of like some of those bans. Some one of them was that they can't necessarily apply for like visas like outside of the United States, and that's kind of temporary. They are sort of weighing it out. The ban also included that they won't be able to do like adjust their status if they're in the United States, right? But there is what some people do not understand when it comes to getting a green card. Like I said, so there are like different steps to it. So the first step is that nobody can just nobody can wake up and say, I want to apply for a green card. You have to you have to have a reason to apply for a green card, and that reason is what I call a parent petition. So if you have a family that is in the United States, they are your sibling, or you're a child of a US citizen or whatever it is, so they have to apply for something for you called from I-130. They'll look at that, they're like, okay, oh, that's true, you guys are related, go apply for a green card. So before they also allow you to apply for your green card for whatever it is, and you want to self-petition yourself, so the parent petition has to be approved first of all. So that's the EB1A or the EB2 NIW. So when that is approved, then they will allow you to go apply for your green card. So what the ban is stopping right now. The ban is not stopping countries that at the time of making this video, any citizen or any country from submitting the first step process. So if you want to submit your EB2 NIW or EB1A, they will allow you submit. They will allow you submit your application. By the time you submit your application, what the ban does is, for now, they won't just tell you the decision of your application. They won't tell you if it's approved or denied. But if there's like a need to explain more, they will tell you that. And that's that. So if you submit and you notice that they didn't reach out to you anytime soon, and you did premium processing, that means that they're like, okay, most likely you're probably approved. That's no news is good news when it comes to US immigration. So the ban currently doesn't stop you from applying. And you're like, okay, why not? Why do I not? Why should I? Let me just wait until they lift the ban and I can apply. There are two reasons why that might not be a good idea. The second is that the day they lift the ban, you can't work on a great petition that day. You can't say, oh, now the ban is lifted. Let me go submit the petition the next day. It takes an average of 2 months to be able to write a good petition, a thorough great petition. So that means if you wait it, then you have to wait an additional 2 months before you can write a great petition. So you see why waiting is not an option. There's a part of the process that you can control, there's a part you can control. So the part you can control, understand the process well, write your application and be very thorough about it and submit it. And that's even though you are in part of the banned countries. The other part is that when because of um, there's so much of demand and supply compared to the immigration, the green card. So let me just give you a rough example. US can only give 100,000 green card, a rough example, for the EB2 holders. People that are applying, they are 150,000 per year. So they won't give everybody, right? They are just going to give the first 100,000 people. So the 50,000 people, they will say, you know what, we'll give you a green card next year. So by the time next year they have a new fresh release of 100,000 green card, another 150,000 people apply. So that's 150,000 plus 50,000, that is 200,000. So what they will say is, let's first give the first 50,000 that applied from last year the green card and the new 50,000. So we have another backlog of 100. So what this process is doing is that they call it what some people call priority dates. So priority date is based off of your submission dates. So if you submit early, you have an early priority date. So what does this mean for you right now that there's a ban? So even though when you submit this application, you are going to have a priority date. The date you submit your application, you will be able to retain it, right? So when they then leave this ban, let's say they leave this ban like next month in March, and somebody submits, they decide to wait, they wait another 2 months to work on the application. So April. So let's say they submit in April, you submitted in February. So, and let's say both of you, they then give everybody their decision in that April. What has happened was that they would give you most likely your green card first of all, because you submitted earlier in February compared to the person who submitted in April and waited until April, or even though they even got their decision before you. So it's not about like who gets approval first, it's about who submits first. So that's something you need to know. So make sure that you're not wasting any time. So the question, what would you do if there are no constraints? And the thing that I need to tell you is that there will probably always be constraint. You have to think about it. What constraint do I have right now that I can overlook, and I'm not creating additional constraint myself? I know it's not that easy. Like there's that mental block of, okay, I know this policy stuff and all like that, but it has always been that way. People would always make complaints. There will always be challenge. Just put in the work. So if I were anybody right now, put in the application and submit. Now, a few days ago, when the Visa Bulletin was released, and for those that don't know what the Visa Bulletin means, it's like, think of it as a timetable or a calendar that the USCIS release every month, and that calendar is like what everybody's looking at to be able to know who is going to apply for their green card. So you know that I spoke about priority date as basically the dates that you submitted your application. So they are using that date. So somebody that submitted in 2024 of January, they are like, okay, now you can go apply for your green card because of your date is now current. So they will keep releasing the dates. They're like, okay, now you guys can go apply for your green card now because of we have enough spaces, almost your turn. So they release that bulletin every month. So for the longest part, for like almost 3-4 years right now, the Visa Bulletin used to show that EB2 NIW is not current, while EB1A is current. So what that means is that if you apply for an EB1A, immediately you apply, you can almost immediately you get approval, you can almost qualify to submit and apply for your green card. But for the EB2 NIW, you can't at the time. You will need to wait. Um, you need to wait for your turn, and most likely that your turn when you project is always like a year or 2 years or thereabouts. But based off of the Visa Bulletin they released, the dates became current, but it did not become fully current. Now, what do I mean by did not become fully current? And that's where like US immigration is just so many information. Even right now in my head, I'm trying to think about it that oh, maybe I'm explaining this thing. You guys are trying to like understand because it's complicated. So we have to talk about this like back to back regularly. So, but in case you also want to have a detailed understanding of this EB2 NIW, you can check out the course that I have. So, and I think if somebody can try to I'll put the link to the course. So this is about an 8-hour watch course. It explains everything in detail. So what I mean is current or current is that so in those days there's something we call date of filing and final action date. So date of filing is that USCIS will say that okay, you guys it's current for you to apply for your application to get your green card, but until your final action date is current, we are forget the final action date or English. There are two dates. Let me take that away. So there's one date that says go ahead to apply. But the dates that we are going to really look at to give you your green card is this second date. Until that second date is current, they won't give you your green card. And that second date, the date is still in 2024. And I'm not going to, let me try to look for I don't want to waste so much of the time, but the final action date is still, I think, is somewhere in 2024, right? So, but the good news, the way that is good is that it's basically good for those in the United States mostly. So what that means is that so if let's say you're about to run out of status based off of that first date, so far you submit your application and you didn't run out of status before that date, you are good to go. And most likely they are going to also give you your work authorization. So pending the time they give you a green card, work authorization allows you to work at least pending time your green card is being processed, but you won't still get your green card until the final action date is current. So based off of true projection, the EB2 is not still fully current. There's still that 2 years sort of backlog, but the EB1A is still sort of current. Both data are current. So if you are like you're in a quote rush and you qualify for the EB1A, go for it right now. I don't think you should go back to the EB2. But if you are like, okay, oh, I don't think I qualify for EB1A, but EB2 is like current now, so you can go for it. So it means it's better than nothing. Like they say, have is better than none. So let me take on questions because I want us to end at next 10 minutes. One question says, without publication, can I justify the three prongs where I am applying for EB2 NIW? Sure. Yes, you can justify the prong is there's nowhere on the website that says you must have publication to get approval for EB2 NIW. In fact, there's nowhere on the website that says you must have publication to get approval for EB1A. So a person's profile is somebody's professional journey is different, right? So somebody can be big on publication and still not get approval. So it's about like first of all, how do you tell your story? What have you achieved as a whole in your field that makes you feel like okay, you're a person of an exceptional ability? So you don't have publication. What other things make you feel like okay, you understand what you're doing? So publication takes a while. I know people that they add zero publication. It's not even 1, 2, 3 people and they got approval for this. I hope that answered the question. What advice should you give someone without about their current EB2 date after submitting for EB2 NIW in March last year without premium processing? So, so I'm guessing that this person they submitted EB2 NIW and they feel like their date is current last year without premium processing. If they have the money right now, they can do the premium processing. The only thing is that if they are from part of the banned countries, they still won't give them a decision. They won't give them decision. So if you go to the premium processing, So what can happen is that you might get, let's say you get an RFE, you know that okay, then you sort of respond to things. So it's like if you have the money and you are from, if you have the money and you're not from the banned country, go for it. If you have the money and you are still from the banned country, go for it. When you do the payment processing and you don't hear back from them in a good number of days, just know that that's sort of almost good news, because they are not going to still tell you what your decision is. It's more like you're doing payment processing, but you're not benefiting of the benefit of payment processing, because they're supposed to give you the decision in 45 business days. But yeah, um, so the other question is, as a current student with an approved I-140 that won't graduate until December 2027, will you advise applying for EAD during the adjustment of status process? This is a kind of funny question. So I remember at the time when I was also applying for uh my I-76, my sorry, when I was applying for my I-485, that's adjustment of status, I applied for the EAD, that's I-765. And I remember at the time somebody was like, oh, don't apply for it, what if they deny your your I-485? These things are, there are things that happen 1 out of 1 million time. So why is it me it's going to be my turn that is going to happen? That's one. So they were like, I should not apply, because when I apply, is people just, there are a lot of fear mongers out there. That's number one. So when I then applied for it, I see people that said I should not use it. So I was like, I had this thing, like I have authorization to work in the United States. What do you mean I should not use it? So I had the authorization by the time my EAD has not arrived. So what I did was, I think I just intentionally would just go and register on the platform to put my EAD card. I don't think I necessarily worked on the platform. I can't remember, but it's not an issue. So if you have graduation until December 2027, the additional money to apply for the EAD is $260. If you think you have $60 to spare, apply for it, because you don't know how things are moving, especially if you are approved I-140 is EB2 NIW. Inside that backlog, there's another backlog. It's better to have your EAD like this. You're holding it, and you know that okay, you can wake up tomorrow and say, okay, maybe you go broke or whatever it is, you can go apply. So what I would say is better to have something that you need. That's something that it's better to have something that you don't need than need something that you don't have. But I know your fear might be, oh, what if the stuff is not eventually approved? A balance could be, you could apply for it, don't use it, and keep it. That's one way. Can Nigerians with approved EB2NIW adjust their status with the ban in place? Yes, they can adjust their status, but they won't give them their approval decision. Yeah, they can adjust their status, they won't give them an approval decision. Most likely, they are using instances where they're also even giving them work authorization, but they won't give you they won't give you your what's it called? They won't give you any approval notice. Approval notice for EB2, approval notice for I-485, they won't give you any approval notice, but you will just get at least, but it's better than you're on the queue. So by the time they lift up the ban, either if the decision is done, so most likely the decision will be done already, they won't just tell you. So compared to then starting when they lift up the ban, then they are now processing your case, which is taking like longer time. So there is says, but what if you are not approved? What if they are not approving from banned countries? How does this current priority date applies? That's it. I don't know that if that is true. If they are not approving from banned countries, how does current priority date applies? Okay, let me try to answer that question from a. I think I understand what the question is. So if they are not approving, and just want to say, so right now the priority date is, the visa bulletin is from March. Please don't wait until March before you start to work on whatever date that is there. So you have to wait until March 1st. Now, so if they are not, um, so I'm assuming like this person has not submitted their EB2NIW. So if you've not submitted EB2NIW, I don't think this priority date should be a factor for you submitting or not, because even though they have not lifted this, the priority date is not current, what would you be doing? Would you still wait? So, and that's the thing that's happening right now. People that waited, or they are waiting for this recurrence before they apply for EB2. I have people that are waiting to build their profile for them to qualify for EB1A, that's why they're not doing EB2. They're like, EB2 is shallow, EB2 no, EB2 is not current. I'm waiting for EB1. But if they are done EB2 at the time, their priority date would have been current now. So you can't wait for opportunities before you get them. So and I was like, do this EB2 because in fact the confidence I had to do EB1 was because I had done EB2, so which gave me more confidence to do my EB1. Now that was when I upgraded my EB2 to EB1. And just so you know, I did everything myself. I probably even sent it to my friends that were like, maybe to just review and all of that, and people that didn't even understand anything about the process. So, especially the EB1. Now, so what happens is you're from the banned country, this dates being correct or not does not affect you. So, if you're from the banned country, you submitted already, and one thing you can do is either if you want to do, maybe you want to do, you want to apply for your I-485 alongside your I-140. I will not advise that except you're about to go out of status. So if you are not about to go out of status and your date is not current, I don't think you should also apply for I-485. Just continue your normal processes, submit your EB2 application. When they lift the ban, they will give you decision on your application, because what you should be hustling for, more important right now, is that priority date. Priority date. Because when your priority date reaches your turn for the final action date, it's like first come, first serve. I hope that answered the question. There's a bunch of questions here, but I'm just going to take, we have 2 more minutes. I think there's always a deadline to submit AOS after one's priority to complete. What happens in the case of retrogression and one has yet to submit? There's always a deadline to submit amendments of status after once they become current. What happens in the case of retrogression and one has yet to submit? So when there's a retrogression, there's a retrogression. So they are following the date. So the date is current now, and most likely that might be what would happen. Most likely when they leave the ban from some certain country, they might the number projection might like they might be destabilized and like, you know what, guys, let's take it back to the old dates. So that's not a you thing. So I don't even see how that is affecting you. So if currently right now, let's say the date is still current, next month is current, next 3 months is current, 4 months, 5 months, you still have a good number of time before it looks as though you've abandoned the whole process. So if it then retrogress, then it is you that did not submit. So it's because, so if it says it's current now, I see no reason why you should, and you've getting approved I-140, I see no reason why you should not put in your application. So it's not if a ban is placed on you, I don't see why naturally as humans you should now put extra ban on yourself. The ban doesn't say you can't submit. The ban just say we won't give you notification on your decision of approval. Thanks for your help during my EB2NIW project 2024. Thank you so much. Oh, I don't know who this person is, but you're welcome. I submitted my EB1A and this is another question, and I got an RFE. On my RFE, the USCIS provided me with evidence I didn't submit. So I'll articulate on EB1A. How best should I reply? I have a course on the EB2NIW, but one of the module, if I'm not mistaken, should be module 8. And I'm probably going to share my screen to show that module 8 talks about how to respond to RFE. And in that module, I spoke specifically about how, like, why RFE happens, so that you can think about the thought process. But that module specifically addressing RFE from an EB1 and EB2 perspective. So you could check out the course. Somebody should try to put it on the comment section. But on something you also know, so I'm already currently also releasing a very soon, it's going to be published, the EB1A DIY course. And one thing you can do, except you want to reach out to people, consultant or something to talk to you, to help you, but you could just also book a one-on-one session with me. It's right here in the chat. And so when the officer mentioned things that were not in your petition, I think that's a good news for you. It means that the officer probably did not like take the time to read the petition. So it's not like the officer mentioned a lot. They might mention a lot of factual things that you need to address. So you need to also mention and say, I think this is not part of my field. So this is like you trying to shoot the officer and say, hey officer, this is A, why you mentioning B? So I would say for you it's a good thing, but it's just so sad that the process, it should not be that way. The officer is not supposed to copy some things from another person into your own, but they are also humans. So this means that this might be a projection that your case is actually a valid one. maybe they just needed to buy time, like some people will claim that's why they give RFEs and all that. For Nigerian with approved EB2 NIW, can you proceed the limit of status as at the current date? Yes, you can go submit, but wait until next month when the priority date is effective. The priority date is not effective now until March. And that's that about it. Yeah, so that's the course in case you want to be going on session. So there's going to be so many things. So please do to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Do to subscribe, follow us on Instagram. And there's going to be so many things I'm going to be talking about. In case this was a value for time, do go to let me know. I'm going to be like creating time out of my schedule. In case you have more specific questions, send us an email at jjebgreencard@gmail.com. So when you send an email, we could answer that, and you could also be part of the newsletter. So I'm going to be ending the live very soon because I want to respect people's time. And let me just give you the opportunity to answer one more question before we call it a date. Any one more question? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Thank you everybody for joining. It was a value for time. So next month, most likely about like the third week or second week, we're going to talk about, we're going to give out information out there. So let's have this discussion. Let's have this conversation. The goal is, even though you don't eventually have a one-on-one with me, even though you don't get the course, my goal this year is to democratize knowledge, and I'm doing that aggressively. I want people to know about that. It's enough of all the information. Go to ChatGPT, explain DB2 for me, explain this priority. All these questions you're asking me, you can also ask AI, but be careful whatever the response is giving, because you want to be sure it's giving the right response. And that is the end of today's live. See you all in our next live session. Bye, everyone.